guys, Victor here with a brand new video, and I gotta talk about a premier matchup that I literally just figured out just last night. UFC 276 International Fight Week is coming back to Las Vegas, Nevada, the first week of July, and man oh man, it's got a huge fight card lined up for every single one of you guys, including myself. The fight card is extremely stacked, and there's one fight on there that really caught my eye. It's not the main event, it's not the kill main event, but it's a fight that's possibly going to be on the prelims, but it's going to be a firework of a matchup if this fight goes through, if no one gets hurt beforehand. I'm talking about Pedro Munhoz, who's 19-7-1. He's got 5 KOs, 8 subs against the rainbow-haired warrior, the tattooed face, the walking light post because he's so skinny. I'm talking about Sugar Sean O'Malley, who's 15-1, 11 KOs, 1 sub. He's riding a 3-fight win streak. All those 3 fights, all those wins have been by knockout or TKO. He knocked out Thomas Almeida. He knocked out Chris Coutinho on his feet. He also knocked down Aurelian Paiva, which is his last win. Now his opponent, Pedro Munhoz, has been up and down lately. He is currently 1-4 in his last 5 fights. His last couple of wins were against Jimmy Rivera, who's no longer with the UFC, and Cody Garbrandt, who's most likely out of the UFC if he ends up taking another knockout loss again. So obviously, Pedro Munhoz has been up and down. He hasn't really won in a while, but he's been facing some really fierce competition. He ended up fighting Dominic Cruz. That was a loss. He ended up fighting Aljamain Sterling. That was a loss. He ended up fighting the legend Jose Aldo. That was a loss. So these are all quality losses that Pedro Munhoz is going through right now. And the reason why he hasn't been cut by the UFC is because of how much of an exciting fighter that he is. Now, Sugar Sean O'Malley, like I said, he is on a 3-fight winning streak. He's 3-1 in his last 4 fights. The last time he lost is in 2020 against Marlon Chito Vera, who's on a roll right now. Just defeated Rafa a couple weeks ago. He should be in the top 5 right now. If he's not, he's most likely ranked 6 in the bantamweight division right now in the UFC. So that's obviously was a quality loss for Sean O'Malley. But this is going to be Sean O'Malley's biggest fight up to date since that loss against Marlon Chito Vera, where he suffered an ankle injury, and it was a pretty nasty one as well. But ever since he's come back, Sean O'Malley has been balling. You know, every single time he wins, he ends up giving the little Michael Jordan or the LeBron James balling sign every single time he gets a knockout or a TKO. And obviously, the only reason why Sean O'Malley does all that because he has a lot of confidence in himself. He has a lot of self-belief in himself. He's full of himself, if a lot of you guys believe that or not. Also, there's a huge difference between these two individuals. And I'm going to say it right now, is the quality of competition. Pedro Munhoz has faced the who's who in the bantamweight division when Sean O'Malley has not. The reason why Sean O'Malley hasn't faced as stiff as competition as Pedro Munhoz has as of late is because he believes that he should be paid a whole lot more than what he's currently worth in the UFC. He believes that he should be paid like a superstar, just like Conor McGregor, just like Dustin Poirier, Khabib Nurmagomedov, Jorge Masvidal, the whole 9. He believes that he needs to be paid in order to fight the tougher competition. But I hate to break it to Sean O'Malley. In order to get paid, you need to fight the big boys of the division. You need to face the Pedro Munhoz. You need to face the Aljamain Sterlings, the Peter Youngs, the Corey Sandhagens. You need to face the who's who of the division so you can have more name or notoriety. You can't be knocking out Thomas Almeida, Eddie Winelands, Chris Coutinho's, people that we really haven't heard of before because of how low their name recognition currently is. And I don't even think Thomas Almeida is with the UFC anymore. I don't think Chris Coutinho is going to be with the UFC anymore if he keeps on taking these knockout losses, because he's literally a human, breathing punching bag. And if you guys think I'm lying, you should be able to check out that fight that Chris Coutinho had with Guido Canetti. He ended up taking the same amount of punishment that he took against Sean O'Malley, but the ref was a whole lot smarter this time and stopped the fight a lot earlier than it should have been stopped. So, obviously, Chris Coutinho, you can't really call that a quality win because he only uses one form of defense, and that's blocking the majority of the punches using his face. So obviously, if Sean O'Malley wants to get paid, if he wants to become a champion someday, he's going to have to take those huge steps in the division in order to climb up the rankings as fast as he possibly can. And this fight against Pedro Munhoz is going to be a good one for him because Pedro has been on a little bit of a downhill slope, but it's not like Pedro's been losing these matchups one-sidedly. Obviously he puts up a lot of fight, a lot of effort, and a lot of heart into every single one of his matchups. It's just that he's been facing the who's who of the division, some of the toughest matchups you can possibly ask for, and I believe Pedro is going to come into this fight possibly the underdog just because of how hot of a streak Sean O'Malley has been lately. But like I said, Pedro, you can never knock him down. You can never count him out. He's got a lot of power. He can be able to submit you. He's got 8 submission wins. Like I said, he's 19-7-1 with 8 submission wins. Now, half of his wins have been by submission. So, actually, the majority of his wins have been by submission. So you can never count out Pedro Munhoz at all. And I believe he's going to come in here as hungry as ever to get a win in the UFC, because I feel like if he doesn't, there's a possibility that he's going to get the boot. So Sean O'Malley is going to be on high alert the whole entire time if he wants to be or not. Because like I said, Sean O'Malley is full of himself. He's basically pumped up. Let's just say that if confidence was a drug, then Sean O'Malley's been overdosing on it for a very, very, very long time now. And if I'm Sean O'Malley, you're going to want to try to take this to the floor. I'm going to backtrack on that. I'm not going to say take it to the floor, but I'm going to say keep it on the feet and keep it at the feet the whole entire time, because Sean O'Malley, like I said, that fight against Chito Vera got TKO'd via ground and pound because of the injury that he sustained, but he wasn't really doing good on the ground against Chito Vera to begin with. So if I'm Pedro Munhoz, I'm going to definitely pressure Sean O'Malley the whole entire time and keep some good footwork and some good head movement, because Sean O'Malley is a really good striker as well. But Sean O'Malley is pretty tall and lanky, so that's something that Pedro Munhoz can definitely be able to benefit from and definitely take advantage of at the same time as well. If I'm Sean O'Malley, definitely want to use that length that he has to keep the width and keep the distance. Obviously you don't want to be close to the guard of Pedro Munhoz, because you can definitely be susceptible to eating a lot of shots and possibly getting knocked out. So obviously the only time that Sean O'Malley is going to want to be close to Pedro Munhoz is either in the clinch or trying to take him down. But Sean O'Malley is a self-proclaimed striker, and he's a self-proclaimed knockout artist. He believes he can be able to knock out anybody in the bantamweight division. So obviously he's going to want to stay on the feet with Pedro Munhoz, and he's most likely going to, and basically display an array of striking skills that Pedro hasn't really seen from a lot of people, just because Pedro, the last person that was tall and lanky that faced Pedro Munhoz was most likely Dominic Cruz. That's the only other person that can really go off of right now that's pretty tall or lanky, or maybe even Aljamain Sterling as well. So those are just a couple of individuals that kind of have a little bit of the same body frame as Sean O'Malley that Pedro Munhoz can be able to go off of. But definitely pressure Sean O'Malley. Definitely want to throw a lot of volume up there, overwhelm him, and make Sean O'Malley commit to some mistakes. Because Sean O'Malley hasn't been in there with an animal such as Pedro Munhoz. And Pedro Munhoz has been with plenty of other guys with more skills that pay the bills than Sean O'Malley. Pedro's already been battle tested. He's already been in the deep waters. He knows what it's like to lose. He knows what it's like to win, and I believe he's going to go in there with a huge chip on his shoulder, and he's going to try to go for the finish. And if he learns anything from Chito Vera, he's going to try to get Sean O'Malley to the floor and definitely rough him up with some ground and pound and possibly go for that submission as well, because he is not only just good on the feet, but he's also good on the ground as well. And like I said, with Sean O'Malley, keep it on the feet the whole entire time. Want to keep the distance. You definitely want to keep the distance with some push kicks. So basically some front kicks to the midsection of the body of Pedro Munhoz, and definitely throw some head kicks in there as well, some roundhouse kicks, using the right leg, using the left leg as well. And keeping that side-to-side movement, definitely keeping Pedro Munhoz guessing and having him commit to his own mistakes as well. But definitely keep the movement, definitely keep the distance, and cut some angles to be able to throw some shots that Pedro won't be able to see. Those are definitely some of the keys to victory that Sean O'Malley should utilize in order to win this fight against Pedro Munhoz. And like I said, Pedro has to pressure, and be able to throw those power shots when he can, to be able to knock down Sean O'Malley and possibly knock him out as well. Like I said, Sean O'Malley has only lost once. It was against Marlon Chito Vera, and that was the first finish that he's ever suffered in his whole entire career. He's been looking good lately in these wins, but the majority of his opponents are outside of the top 15, while the majority of the opponents that Pedro Munhoz have been facing lately over the past couple of years have not only been in the top 15 or in the top 10, but also been in the top 5 as well. So obviously, Pedro, like I said, he's faced former champions, current champions, and now he's going to be facing an up and rising star in Sean O'Malley. Can't wait to see this fight. I think it's going to be amazing. I think it's going to be great. And if it does headline the prelims, I think it's going to be an amazing fight to headline the prelims. If not, it should be the first fight on that main card. What do you guys think about Sean O'Malley versus Pedro Munhoz? Let me know in the comments section. I think it's going to be a banger of a fight, and I'm not going to give a prediction on this one just because of how certain things can be able to play into for each fighter. So, like I said, hope you guys enjoy the fight. It's going to be a great one. UFC International Fight Week, UFC 276 out of Las Vegas, Nevada. We're coming back stronger than ever. First International Fight Week where a lot of festivities and a lot of activities are going to be taking place since the beginning of the pandemic. Hope you guys enjoy it. Stay safe. Stay blessed. Later.